Hey friends, I'm Remington, welcome. So I've decided to start the Read the World challenge. I'm going to read at least one book from every country in the world, or at least that's the goal. So far with my reading, I haven't particularly sought out different countries to read from, so don't be expecting too many countries yet. But over time, I'll be adding a lot more. So a big inspiration for me deciding to take on this challenge was Jack Edwards. He has done a similar thing on his channel, and he's made several videos with recommendations for each country. If you're interested in this kind of thing, I would highly recommend that you check out his videos as well. I'm taking on this challenge both because it sounds fun, and also because I think it'll be a good challenge for me to expand my reading horizons. If you asked me to name all the countries in the world, I might be able to get 70 to 80. And if you asked me anything about half of those countries, I wouldn't really be able to tell you much. So I'm hoping that this challenge will be a fun way to kind of help me know just a little bit more about the world. I'm also going to be expanding the US and Canada into their respective states and territories. That isn't so much for the challenge, but just to let me see where exactly I'm reading from. For most of the books, it's going to be fairly straightforward how I categorize them. If an author is from a certain country, that is where I'm going to be putting their book. Occasionally it does get a little bit more complex though if an author is from multiple countries or if they grew up in one country and then moved to another one. In those cases, I'm going to be using my own judgment as well as what the book is about to determine. This gets a little bit more complex when we look at the United States because a lot of authors may have been born in one state but they grew up or lived somewhere else for the majority of their life, and so it's not necessarily a great representation. However, for the most part, I'm going to be going by birth for state. Unless I specifically know about the author living somewhere else, or when I'm looking them up, it's very clear that they are living somewhere else and have lived the majority of their life somewhere else. I'm going to be categorizing it in the state that they were born in. I'm not too worried about the states themselves because that's just kind of a fun thing that I'm tacking on to the challenge. For marking the countries, I'm just going to go by geographic position just so I can move my camera mount around the map without bumping into any pins that I've already put in. And so to start, we're in Russia, where I've only read one book from, surprisingly, The Principles of Communism by Frederick Engels. Russia is a country that I expect to read a lot more from in the future, and I'm kind of surprised that I've only finished the one so far, but more will definitely come in the next few years. And then moving over to Japan, we have two books. Well, I'm categorizing it as two books because one of them, Full Metal Alchemist, is a manga series with 27 volumes, and I just don't feel like categorizing that as 27 books is quite fair. Moving on to Iran. We also have two books over here, although they are two graphic novels, so I'm not exactly sure how I feel about categorizing them as two when I'm categorizing 27 volumes of a manga as one volume. Moving over to India, we have one book, which I would not recommend that you read. I will definitely want to read at least one other book from India because The Lotus and the Cross was not it. Moving down to the Australia, we have some philosophy from Peter Singer. Both of the works I've read from him are fine, however, I would like to expand my Australian horizons a little bit more. Then we're going north to Europe. And we're going to start in Sweden. For Sweden, we have four books, including one DNF, Anxious People by Fredrik Backman. I'm not sure how I feel about including that. I might take it off in the future, but we'll see how that goes. And then for Denmark, we have The Employees. For Germany, we have The Diary of a Young Girl. I'm kind of surprised that I haven't read more from Germany yet, but more will definitely be coming soon. Then moving over to Scotland, we have What We Owe the Future by William McCaskill. And then moving south down to England, we have quite a few books. And any country or state or territory that goes over 10, I will be using multiple pins to color code how many books I've read from there. As you can see here, we've got the 2 black pins and then one of the blue pins to show how many books I've read from England. And then from Ireland, we have 2, including another DNF, which the more I think about it, the more I think that I will actually remove those in the future. Then moving down to France, we have 2 books. I'm not very familiar with any more French books, so I don't know how much more I'll be reading from France in the future. Moving over to the Middle East, we do have 1 from Palestine, The 100 Years' War in Palestine by Rashid Khalidi. I do plan to be reading a couple more books from around the Middle East fairly soon, including 1 or 2 more from Palestine. Then moving west, we have Nigeria. I've only read 1 book from Nigeria so far, although I do have another one by Chimamanda that I plan on reading this year. And that's every book that I've read that isn't from North America. And I know that's not very many, and that's a big reason why I'm taking on this challenge, is to change that. But the rest of this video will be diving into both Canada and the United States and separating those books into their respective territories. For Canada, I chose to put in the number of pins for the total country right next to the country name on the map. I'm not sure how I feel about this because I haven't read any books from Manitoba, and it kind of looks like I have if you're just looking at the territories. So I think I'll probably change that. Anyway, for British Columbia, I've only got 1, The Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel. And then moving to the east, Ontario, I have a few more. I have 4 books for Ontario. It's a little odd to me how 3 of them are graphic novels. I don't quite know how that worked out. For Quebec, we have The Market Gardener, which is a little book I read a few years ago when I was starting a little market garden. And that's already it for Canada. So now the rest of the video is dedicated to the United States of America. The vast majority of my reading has come from the States. And I don't expect that to change. I just want the proportion to change. From right now, I think it's pretty high into like maybe 70%, and I'd like that to fall closer to under 50%, I think would be ideal. So firstly, we have Alabama. We're just going to be going alphabetically for the states. We have 3 books for Alabama, all bangers, I would say. Then moving over to California, we have 19, which was the most by far for any state. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. And here again, you can see me putting in multiple pins into California. And then for Colorado, we have the Red Rising trilogy by Pierce Brown, bringing us to 3 for Colorado. Then we're going to move over to Connecticut, where we only have 1 book. And moving east to Illinois, we have 3 books. Moving over to Idaho, we have some representation from Tara Westover. A very good book, I'd highly recommend. And then Indiana, of course, we have John Green, one of my favorite people. Then we're moving over to Kansas, where we've got Unfollow by Tara Westover, another really good book I'd recommend. And then we've got 1 for Kentucky, Making Time by Bob Clagett. Moving up to Maine, we have Stephen King's Home State, and 3 books from him so far. Probably many more to come, I'd assume. For Maryland, we've got 2 books, both bangers, highly recommended. Then my home state, Michigan, we have 3 graphic novels, nothing else. I don't know how that worked out like that, but no complaints. Including my favorite book, Blankets by Craig Thompson. Very highly recommended. Then we've got The Great Gatsby from Minnesota. And The Secret History for Mississippi. great representation. If you only read one book from Mississippi, you cannot go wrong with The Secret History. Moving over to Missouri, we have in Montana, we have Hank Green, John Green's brother. New Mexico, we have Hatchet, another classic. And unsurprisingly, we have a few more from New York. We've got 7. A pretty broad variety of books from New York. And then we're finally going to visit the worst state in the Union, Ohio. Although, the books I've read from Ohio have been pretty good so far. Then Pennsylvania, we got Outlaw Platoon. Moving down to Texas, we've got 8 books. In no small part due to Rick Riordan. Then in Utah, we've got 3 all Brandon Sanderson books. Then in Vermont, we got Bernie representing with the only book from Vermont so far. Then we've got 1 book from Virginia. And then lastly, 4 books for Washington. So there you have it. That is all the books that I can remember reading. I'm sure that there's a few throughout my life that I've missed, but for the most part, that's it. And as you can see, it's not very diverse on the map. I haven't read anything from Central or South America at all, and most of Africa is empty, as well as large portions of Asia. But of course, I am only just starting the challenge now, so that'll change as the years go on. And it is going to take years. I don't plan on rushing this. I don't plan on stopping reading American or European books to meet some sort of quota. I'm just going to introduce books from other countries into what I'm already reading and seek out ones that sound interesting to me as well. This is a project that'll probably take decades for me. This year specifically, I hope to add 3 new countries to the list. And I actually already have my books picked out for which countries I'm going to read from. I'll probably update this video in a year or so with new markers for all the books that I've read. I can't wait to see how much the map is going to change. I might also do a video on books that I want to read from certain countries, kind of similar to the ones that Jack Edwards has done. Anyway, that's all I have for this video. In a few days, I'll probably be putting out my Well of Ascension review, so stay tuned for that if you're interested. Anyway, thank you so much for watching the video. If you liked the video, go ahead and leave a like. If you'd like to see more, go ahead and subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next one. Peace.